All right, good morning. It's just after 8 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. No, it's kind of early on a Sunday morning, but this is really whenever I send out the survey, this is the time that worked the most for everyone. So that's what we'll go with. All right, so really about the only thing I want to talk about today is we'll go over some GUI stuff that you need to accomplish the assignment that you have coming up due on Tuesday. All right, so we'll go over making a very simple GUI, and then it'll be your job to figure out how to extend that and use what you're seeing here this morning in order to accomplish the assignment. Okay, it's probably only take about 20 minutes or so. All right, so what is a GUI? A GUI stands for a graphical user interface, right? It's buttons and widgets and things you can click on your screen instead of just having a command line program where you select one for this, two for this, and so on and so forth. You actually have buttons that you can click on and windows you can move around and things like that. All right, so first we have our main, what we call a frame, a J frame, and this is the main window of your program. We create it like this: JFrame equals a new JFrame. And then we can do a couple things with it. We can set its size with frame.setSize. Let's just make this one 200 by 200, and that's in pixels. We can set its location on the screen. Let's set it to be at 300 at 400 location on the screen. And then to show it, we just do frame, was it display? Set visible, that's it. Do frame.setVisible, and that'll actually show the window up on our screen. So let's just run this. Let it compile. Usually takes a second to compile the first time. So it's still compiling. Let's just give it a minute. Any second now. All right, let's cancel that and try to build it again. Something must be hung up on my laptop. All right, seems to be hung up on something. We might just restart IntelliJ here in a second. Yep. Let's just restart IntelliJ. Something is hung up with it. Wait for it to close. Let's run it again. My laptop looks like it's running really slowly this morning, so just bear with me. Come on, wake up. There we go. It's starting to come up now. All right, let's try this again now. Wait for it to finish indexing these files. And then we'll try to give it a compile and run. There we go. All right, it looks like it's ready. Oh, updating indexes. All right, click the compile button. Building. There we go. Finally. Okay. So there's our window up. This is the J-frame. The size is 200 by 200. Note that is the what we call the client area. That doesn't include the title bar area with the the minimize, maximize, and close buttons. The 200 by 200 is just where the white square is. The initial location was at 300, 400. I've already moved it around a little bit, but that's the initial location. And when we do set visible, it shows it on the screen. All right, so that's what a J-frame looks like. So let's put some stuff on the window that we can interact with. Actually, for the J-frame, we can also give it a title in here, my title, and we'll see that the next time it comes up. That'll be on the title bar. So we have this concept called a J panel. Now, a J panel can just be like think of it as like a section of your window, some portion of that client area of your window. Usually we will have one J panel that is the entire window itself. And how do we do that? We just create a new panel, and you'll see what I'm talking about here shortly. And then we're going to say the frame set content pane is this panel. And what that means is that white section of our window, that white square of our window, the client area, the entire area is going to be taken up by this panel. And what we can do with this panel is we can add subcomponents to it. We can add buttons to it. We can add text windows to it. We can add combo boxes to it. We can add pictures to it. Any kind of GUI type interface you can think of, we will add it to this panel, and it'll be shown up on the window. One of the other things you have to do with the panel, you have to do a panel.setLayout. So imagine you have 5 buttons you want to add to the panel. Where should they be put at on the panel? Now, you could manually set the coordinates for where those buttons should go, but the better thing to do would be to have what we call a layout manager. And for my example, I'm going to use the border layout manager. But what a layout manager will do, it allows you to add subcomponents to the panel, and the panel will automatically figure out where they should go on the screen. Okay, so for example, first of all, let's comment out the layout panel and see what happens when we add a button
and then we'll add the layout panel, excuse me, we'll add the layout to it, back to it, and we'll see how it arranges the buttons. You'll see the difference. Okay, so think of the panel as like the main portion of our window, and we can now add subcomponents to it. Let's add a button to it. We have what we call a J button. Make it like this, new J button. And then we can put what we want the button to be called. We'll say click me. Now, as I said, whenever you have a subcomponent, you want to add it to this main panel. This where we had the frame set content pane. That means this is our main panel, and that's what we want to add the button to. So do panel.add the button. And that's simple as that. Let's run it. This should now have our window with a button on it. There you go. There's our window, and it has a button called Click Me. Right now, when we click it, nothing is happening. That's because I haven't programmed in Java what I want to happen when I click on it. Okay, but there's our button. Let's imagine we have two buttons. Let's make two buttons. There's button 1. Oops. And we'll have button 2. And then we'll just call them button 1 and make the title button 1, button 2. Let's run that. And you see there we have button 1 and button 2. Right now they're laid out side by side. So if we go back to what I was talking about the border layout, it allows us to have a little bit more control of where the buttons go. So let's uncomment it so it has the border layout again and run it. Right now we only see the button 2, and why is that? It turns out the button 1 and button 2 are actually on top of each other right now. You got to do a little bit more work. And it's right here where we do the panel.add button. We have to kind of give it a hint where to put it at. We can do that with border layout dot. We'll put that on the west, and border layout dot east. So what you have with the border layout, you can have east, west, north and south, and center. And it kind of puts the objects where you think it would. If you say west, it puts it on the left-hand side. If you have east, it puts it on the right-hand side. North puts it at top. South puts it at the bottom. And center will put it in the middle. Okay. So now that we're saying where we want it to be added, we want this one added on the west and this one added on the east. Let's run it. And there you go. We have a button 1 and we have a button 2 in this layout panel. Okay. Now keep in mind, everything that I'm discussing so far here is stuff you will need to accomplish your assignment. I'm not going to address the assignment directly, but what I'm doing here is a good baseline for what you need to do for your assignment. Okay. So now we need to do something whenever I click the button. So let's go back and just have one button again. I don't need two buttons. Let's make this button at the center. Let's run it and make sure it looks like what we think it should look like. There we go. Here's our window. There's our title, my title, with a button called button 1. Okay, so that is working. So now let's do something when the button is clicked. And how do we do that? We do button dot add action listener, and then we make a new action listener. Now inside this method action performed, whatever we put in here, that's what's going to happen whenever I click that button. So we've already had a J option pane before. We've talked about it. We'll just show a message dialog and message, you clicked the button. And this just in title, that's fine. And then we have to tell it what kind. It's just a plain message. There we go. So I've shown you this J option pane before. We can just show a pop-up message dialog. So what will happen is when I click this button, it'll run this function right here. It'll run this action performed, whatever I do in here. And what I'm not doing, I'm just showing a pop-up message dialog. Let's run that. We will click the button and we'll see that pop up. There's the button, I click it, and there's the pop-up. You click the button, exactly what I put right here. And so inside of here, you can do whatever you want to do. Let's say we wanted to do the area of a rectangle. Area equals, well, let's first do the length equals 5, and the height is 10. The area is the length times the height. So we'll say the area is, there we go. Let's just do that. We run it. So now when I click the button, it's going to compute this area and display it. And this is, I mean, they seem like a silly example, but it's really just trying to demonstrate that you can do whatever code you want to do in here. You don't just only have to pop up a message. You do whatever Java functions you want to do in here. So click the button. There we go. The area is 50, right? So that works. Okay. Well, let's imagine now that yeah, this is a good example. You want to get some input from the user. Okay. There are lots of different ways to get input from the user. But one way is with a J option pane. And this is helpful for your assignment. J option pane dot show input dialog. No parent. The message will, let's just say, enter your age. This will be what's displayed as the prompt. And the title is, we'll just call it age. Yep. There we go. Oops. Sorry. Yep. We can just leave it at that. That's fine. Okay. So we'll just pop up an input dialog that says enter your age. If we run this, there we go. There's our button. Click our button. And there we go. It pops up this input dialog that says enter your age. Right? So let's enter our age. I'm not 33, by the way, but click OK. And then something needs to happen. Right? So what happens? Well, if we look at the return type for show input dialog, we see that it returns a string. So whatever we type in is going to be in that string. Okay. And right now, just make sure we're getting the right string. Let's just print it out. Yes. So now, whenever we run this program, whenever we click on the button, whenever we input something into the dialog, it's just going to print it out so that I can show you that this string S is what the user typed in. There's a button, click the button, input dialog, enter your age, we'll just put QWERTY, okay? And then you can see it printed it out on the console right there, QWERTY. Okay, so that works. So what we also have to consider is, let's say we're making a program to say what year you were born in. Okay, we want to convert age to the year you were born in, right? So let's do a little, so string S is going to be your age because that's what we're expecting them to type in. However, S is a string. We actually need it to be an integer, right? To be able to do math, you need a number and not a string. So let's make our age, we can turn a string into an integer like that. Now, what will happen is if you don't input a number, this will cause an error, because let's say if I typed in QWERTY, I can't convert QWERTY to an integer. That doesn't make sense. And so this would actually crash. It would actually be an exception. For this class, I'm not worried about that. You don't need to worry about invalid input. But just, if you're thinking ahead, it is possible that the string they typed in can't be converted to an integer and it'll give an exception. But we're not going to worry about that. I'm not worried about that kind of error checking for this course. All right, so there's age. So how do we convert the year you were born? Is what, 2021 minus your age, right? Give or take, depending on the month you were born in. But in general, this is how you would compute it. If I was doing this for an actual program that people are actively using, you got to check those months and days and make sure you get the right number. But for simplicity's sake, we're just going to say the year you were born is 2021 minus your age. All right. And then let's just print it out and tell them how old they are. Show message dialog, no parent. You were born in this year born. Year born. And it'll just be a normal message dialog, plain message. There we go. So what are we doing here? So we have a button. When we click on the button, we're going to show an input dialog that says enter your age. Whatever they type in will be saved in S. We're going to parse that S into an actual integer called age. We're going to do a computation to figure out the year you were born. And then we're going to show another pop-up message box that says that says what year you were born in. Let's run it. There's a button. Click the button. Enter your age. Say we're 12 years old. Okay. You were born in 2009. Easy peasy, right? The thing is, we can click the button again if we want. 42, you were born in 1979. So every time we click the button, it runs that code in there, 1987. So, here's what happens if you type in something that's not a number. We try to convert that to an integer, but it can't. Click OK. And you can see you get this exception, this number format exception. Now, you can catch that in your code if you want. I'm not that worried about it for this class. But if you wanted to, you could. All right. This is really the extent of about everything you need to know to accomplish this week's assignment. For this week's assignment, you have two buttons in your GUI. I think one's temperature and one's distance, right? And whenever you click on the temperature button, then you need to have the user input a temperature. Then you need to convert the temperature from Celsius to Fahrenheit, or the other way, whatever the assignment says. And then you have to display to the user what that conversion is, right? If you click the distance button, you ask the user for the distance in kilometers, you compute it to the distance in miles, and then you show the distance in miles. It's either kilometers to miles or miles to kilometers, whichever the assignment says. Actually, I have it up here. Let me take a look, make sure I'm telling you accurate. Okay, you'll convert miles to kilometers for the distance, and for the temperature, it will convert Fahrenheit to Celsius. Okay, but one more time, input the degrees in Fahrenheit, convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius, and display the temperature. Now, keep in mind, for your assignment, you can't just do the computation right here. You actually need to use a converter class and a temperature converter class that you create. So don't just do the conversion directly in there. Make sure you're creating those converter and temperature converter classes. All right. And that is all for this week. Standing by for any questions you may have. All right, nothing heard. I'll go over each line one more time and then we'll close it up. Oh, hold on a second. I do have a question. There is a requirement to use double dot NAND. Can you review how that would be used? Yeah, okay. So, yeah. I'm going to do integer dot NAND. But, you know, like I said, your example says double dot NAND. Okay, so right here, whenever I get the input, you know, enter your age as a string. So what if I don't type anything in? Let's run it. Actually, it's the same if I don't type anything or if I type invalid input. So if I don't put anything in and click OK, you know, you can see that I get this exception here, right? Number format exception. So that's the same if I don't type anything in or if I type invalid input in. What's happening here is right here where it's trying to parse that integer. If you don't type anything in, if it's a blank string, it can't parse it. It's an exception. If you type in something that is not a number, it's an exception. So what it's asking you to do, it really wants you to do it in your converter class. But what you would do is, you would do a try catch. Just do a number format exception. Let's put this in here. So right here, we're trying to do the parse integer. If it can't do that, if it's an exception, then what do we want to do if it's an exception? Right? What do we want to do if it can't be converted? For me, I'm just going to show another message dialog that says, you did not enter a number, right? So let's watch what happens here. I'm going to run it. Click my button, enter your age. If I put an actual age, it works fine, born in 1987. If I put in QWERTY, just something that's not a number, it'll say you did not enter a number. If we don't put in anything, you did not enter a number. So in your converter class, you're not getting the input in it, right? You get your input in your main, in your GUI. But think of it like this: like if I had a converter, I don't have a converter class. You need to create that, right? If I have a new distance converter class here, right? Oops. And if I did something like value equals c.convert from this string, you know, something like that. So I'm making an instance of my converter class. I'm using the converter class to convert whatever this is into the appropriate value, right? So what you should do in here is, if we had a class convert distance converter, you know, and it had had a constructor in here, and then it has a method convert, right? So let's say this distance converter it did some kind of math. Int return value equals, say, integer dot parse int s, and then we just return the return value. Okay, so for this converter, all it does is just get the integer value and just return it. Okay, you need to do more stuff for yours, but for example, but what we can do here is where we can have our try and our catch, number format exception. So whenever we try to do this conversion, if everything goes okay, it just does the return value. If something goes wrong, well, let's make it double. double, 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 parse a double. There we go. There we go. So what will happen here? So let's take off this stuff. Well, I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to go through this and compile it because I'm not going to do all your assignment for you. But think about it like, so here at S, we get the input, enter your age. You could have enter miles, you know, whatever. You make your distance converter. You call your distance converter convert method, giving it the input string. So here's the input string. So we want to try to parse that into a double. If there is no exception, if it works okay, then we're just going to return it. Keep in mind, for your distance converter, you actually have to do some math in there too. Okay. However, if there is an exception, if there is a number format exception, if I try to parse something that is not actually a number, I will get this exception, and then I can just return double NaN, which NaN stands for not a number. Okay. So then up here, I can say if value is equal to not a number. And so if it's not a number, I can show an error message or something. Else, show the answer, right? So that's how you can use the double NaN, which stands for not a number. All right, so I'll go down it line by line one more time, and we'll wrap this up. So a J-frame is just a window on your screen. That could be the title of it. Here you're setting the size and the location of your window. Here you are creating a panel to act as, you can think of it as the container for all of your components. We're giving it a layout manager, meaning it'll automatically place the components on the screen for us. And then we're telling the frame, this is our main container, that set content pane. We're making a button. We're doing an add action listener, new action listener, so that every time I click the button, Java automatically calls this method for us. Inside the method, I can do whatever I want. For our example, I just had, you know, let's get rid of this. For my example, I just had the user type in an age. I did some conversion, and then I told them when they were born, right? And then, of course, I need to add this button to my main panel, setting where I want the button to be. And then lastly, the frame.setVisible shows the window on the screen. All right, so that wraps up this week. If you have any questions, please email me and let me know. Sooner the better. All right, everybody have a good day.